Welcome back to a very special mini-sode of Sammy Banana Phone. I'm your host, Sammy Bananas. Here at the women's game, we have just been buzzing about this U.S. women's national team game against Canada that's happening tonight at Audi Field in D.C., home of many national treasures, most importantly, Trinity Rodman. We were actually just in D.C. hosting a live show ahead of this game with some very special guests, 600 fans, and our good friends from Allstate. All of that energy from the live show really got me excited for this game and, of course, for your questions about it. This episode of Sammy Banana Phone was actually made possible by our great friends at Allstate. We are so proud to be teaming up with Allstate because of their commitment to growing the game we love. Thank you, Allstate. Being in your hands feels as safe as this team being in Emma Hayes's. Okay, first things first. When it comes to historic rivalries, USA versus Canada has always been a big one. Maybe it's just the close proximity and shared border. I, for one, came up during the How I Met Your Mother version of USA versus Canada.
Okay, let me try to Canada this up for you, eh?
So I always thought there was room for both Tim Hortons and Dunkin' Donuts, that we could share Niagara Falls and Ryan Gosling, that Canada was America's polite and friendly neighbor to the north with some good-natured banter that can exist between the two of us. And yet, the sports world doesn't agree. A bitter rivalry that started in the ice hockey rink has made its way to the soccer field. In my time with the national team, whenever we faced Canada, even in a friendly, it felt like a big, important game. And that was definitely something that was passed down to my generation of players from the veteran players. We actually have Becky Sauerbrunn explaining this rivalry in her own words. Here she is.
I mean, we've played Canada so much in the history of this program. They're geographically close. We've played with and against a lot of the Canadians through the years, either through the youth teams or the college system and now pro. And we've talked about it before that when you go against people that you know and you know well, it just gets a little bit more heated. And I think because historically, the US has been very successful against the Canadians. Our loss in Tokyo 2021 Olympics in the semis, that's like, if I think about it, maybe the only loss in my career to the Canadians. And I think that just pisses them off and then that pisses us off and then it's just a game. It's just like a rad, heated, awesome game.
Becky mentioned that we rarely lose to Canada, which is true. We've played against Canada 66 times and won 53 of those. That's 80%. You don't need to translate that to the metric system to know we've kind of dominated this rivalry. But this is one of those cases where the numbers don't tell the whole story. Every time you take the field against Canada, the scoreboard gets reset. And the rivalry has never felt one sided because Canada is a really tough team to play against every time. They're organized, physical, and to be honest, their team genuinely has a really tangibly good culture. They work hard to the very end, and you can just tell that they want to make each other look good. With that said, Canada has only beat us 4 times, and we've tied 9 times. I will say in recent years, the gap between the US and Canada has grown smaller. And when I spoke to Canadian legend Christine Sinclair last year, she put into words the USA versus Canada rivalry from Canada's perspective. Here's Sink.
As a Canadian, how we would approach the US games, because you guys, we always said you were number one for a reason. As Canadians, being your neighbors, like we hated that. And like we always felt like the little sibling, the younger sibling that was always just trying to like catch up. And I mean, obviously things were not perfect for you guys, but the support you had from the Federation, the funding you had, just the standards you guys had, whether it was just simple equipment or the number of camps you were able to have, we were envious of what you had, and not in a bad way. Like it was like, see, that's how women athletes should be treated at the very least.
Sink put this pretty wholesomely. She is Canadian, and I would agree that even as rivals, it's been really great to see the growth of the women's game in Canada over the past few years, especially with the inaugural season of the Northern Super League going on right now. That's Canada's first professional women's soccer league that kicked off this spring and is reportedly seeing some really exciting crowds and merch sales. I got the chance to speak with former NWSL star and longtime member of the Canadian squad, Quinn, earlier this year, and they explained what it's like playing in the NSL.
Like, even stepping on the pitch and seeing all of my Canadian teammates, I always forget. I'm like, oh my God, you're Canadian. Like, you're all Canadian. I'm surrounded by Canadians. Or like, I'm on the field, I'm like, I'm in Canada right now. It's such a funny experience. But
That's right. The NSL has more Canadians than the set of Degrassi. I think as that growth and development continues with Canada's domestic league, it will be interesting to see how this national team rivalry evolves in the future. But before we get into that future, I want to take a little dive into the past, and that brings us to our first caller.
Hi, Sam. This is Emily from New Hampshire. I'm so excited for the USWNT versus Canada game. I would love to hear you talk about some of the legends of this rivalry and key moments.
Thank you so much for the question, Emily. I'm so happy that you called in. There's really one big game and two big legends I want to talk about to answer this question. So let's go back in time to the 2012 London Olympics. It's the semifinal between the US and Canada. Christine Sinclair, who we've already heard from today, scores a hat trick against us and has Canada ahead in this game 3-2. This was a terrifying moment for any US fan. It seemed like Canada had that gold medal match in their sights and that the US was going to have to, and I shudder to think about this, compete for third place. And then, well, wait, I don't need to tell you this story. When my first legend of this series, Christine Sinclair, can tell the story for me since she was there. Here's the rest of this epic match from Sync's perspective.
Okay, so Canada is winning 3-2 with like time ticking down. Okay, like maybe like 5 minutes left. I can't remember exactly. And Erin McLeod gets the ball in her hand, goalkeeper for Canada. Mm-hmm. And as goalkeepers do, she took her time to punt the ball. Have you ever seen that call?
I think I know what this is now.
And then the ref, without warning Erin, calls it the free kick, like inside our 18. And then the resulting free kick gets shot into our player with, I don't know. Well, I don't know about VAR these days, but I would like to think her arm was within her silhouette. And next thing you know, the US has a PK score. And then they scored with literally 30 seconds to go on extra time, I think.
I mean, you do have to kind of feel for Sink in that moment. A hat trick to take your team to their first gold medal match, and it gets spoiled by the U.S. women's national team and that iconic last-second header goal by Alex Morgan.
Morgan in the box, one back in the box. Here comes the cross. Oh, it's in! Alex Morgan has done it!
Alex Morgan being, of course, the other big legend of this rivalry. Alex would score 123 goals for the U.S. women's national team in her 14 years with the team. But this is one of my all-time favorites. It would send the U.S. onto a gold medal match, which they would win. But this right here was a medal-worthy moment all its own. And I would bet that this moment still haunts Canada to this day. I think what excites me the most about tonight's game is that these legends could be born again. Christine Sinclair and Alex Morgan are both retired since that epic 2012 showdown. And the rivalry needs some new heroes and, let's be real, villains.
I'll take over and rule the empire. Brilliant.
I cannot wait to see who emerges to make their mark. Let's hear from our next caller.
Hi, Sam. This is Bethany from San Diego. I'm a huge fan of the show. I have a question about Casey Stoney. I'm a big fan of the Wave and was happy to see her land as Canada's head coach. With Casey Stoney and Emma Hayes facing off against each other, can you talk about where each coach is at in their career and the challenges they might be facing as national team managers? Thanks.
Hi, Bethany. Thank you so much for calling in. And what a great question. I'm so happy to give a Wave fan some Alex Morgan content in this episode. Okay, so I think Emma Hayes and Casey Stoney are two of the best coaches in the game right now. And seeing them face off against one another in a friendly that actually means so much to their players is going to be fascinating. Partially because these two go way back to England, where Casey was making the transition from player to coach around the same time that Emma was building her dynasty at Chelsea. Casey actually credited Emma with showing the world exactly what a woman could do with the adequate investment and respect from a club. But tonight, it seems like Casey would really like to show Emma just how far she herself has come as a coach. I want to talk about where these coaches are at in their respective careers at this moment in time. Emma is in a high point of her career right now. She came to the US women's national team from a huge amount of success during her 13 years at Chelsea and immediately won the Olympics with the US women's national team. Now, we see her revolutionizing the way US soccer handles female athletes, reinvigorating the youth program, and basically being one of the main faces of the entire federation. Here's what Emma told Raj earlier this year.
We're putting in place the foundation to develop many players. We'll provide a deeper playing pool that will ultimately be the foundational group that will take us through 27 and 28. But it's bigger than that, as far as I'm concerned, whether it's, creating systems and architecture, as you call it, around the team that will just be there beyond my tenure. I think winning for the US has always been part of the DNA, but we have to be more intentional about it. Because I've been in the ecosystem for so long, I know what people always complained about. So for me, it's actually, fixing those things, but more importantly, let's build something transformational. I'm on this earth once, and I'm in my dream scenario. So let's go big, or as you say, go home.
Emma has a lot of pressure on her to keep succeeding, but she's carrying it with so much confidence and assuredness. The players also speak so highly of her and the way she coaches, but you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to U.S. Women's National Team captain Lindsay Heaps, who told me from their first team meeting with Emma Hayes, she knew things would be different.
I think when I walked out, I was just like, that's a true leader, a true coach, someone that has a lot of experience and someone that wants to take this team to amazing places and sees the potential in it, and then maybe sees the drop off and what needs to be done. I think this is such a cool opportunity for her, and just an amazing opportunity for us to have someone like that.
Casey Stoney, on the other hand, is at a very different point in her coaching career right now. Whereas Emma seems unstoppable, Casey is still looking to make herself undeniable. She was the first manager for the women's team at Manchester United, but despite her success there, she chose to walk away from that team when the club refused to give her the resources she needed. She traded rainy Manchester for sunny San Diego, where she became the San Diego Waves' first ever coach, and she had a phenomenal first season. And then in her second season, she led that team to the Supporters' Shield. But during the 2024 season, the team hit a rough patch amidst a crazy travel schedule, and after a winless streak, Casey was abruptly fired, which shocked me and her. Casey's surprise and disappointment was something she made no secret about. But at the same time, just up north, this was also a difficult period for the Canadian women's soccer program. The Canadian Federation was under fire amidst a drone scandal that revealed they had been using drone footage to scout opponents at the Olympics. That's not allowed. It was uncovered that the unethical practice was actually widespread throughout the Federation and that multiple staff members were aware. So now Canada find themselves in need of a new head coach. Casey was, fortunately for them, ready to go. And it seemed like a moment where both parties needed not so much to reinvent themselves, but just to remind the world of what they were capable of. Here is Casey Stoney on what she made of the Canadian Federation scandal and how she hopes to help the team move past it.
Integrity is really important to me. Winning the right way is really important to me, and making sure the players, because I think everyone forgets, the players were put in the most difficult position during the situation. Their character was questioned, their integrity was questioned, and that can't be happening. It's not them. They haven't done anything in this. What they did was unbelievable to get out of that group in these circumstances. And I think it just showed the spirit and togetherness of the group.
Yeah.
So that excites me, because I'm like, if I can harness that and I can just build on that, there's real potential here.
So here we are now. Casey Stoney in Canada are taking on Emma Hayes in the U.S. Women's National Team. Both coaches have unique stories and paths taken to this game here tonight, and find themselves facing off against one another and trying to lead their national teams toward the next World Cup in 2027. I would be so interested to hear what this rivalry is coming to mean to them as England natives. Have either of them really come to love anything specific about their adopted nations? I hope and pray that Emma Hayes would choose Duncan over Tim Hortons. All right, we have time for one more caller, and it's a familiar voice to TWG listeners.
Hi, I'm Becky Sauerbrunn, longtime listener. I have a question for Sam about the Women's National Team Canada rivalry. What is your favorite moment playing against Canada? And when did you realize that the rivalry was real?
Becky, what are you doing here? I knew Becky was a banana head. Becky, thank you for calling in. And to answer your question, look, when I was a young player and new to the national team, all I had to go off was the attitudes of the older players. And so I always knew that Canada was a huge game. But when I think back, like I was also just trying really hard not to mess up. And that was true for the Canada game. It was true for practice. It was true against other opponents. It was true walking into the meal room. I was trying not to mess up. So I think what I really understood early on was just how precious it was to be a part of the national team. And I would have done whatever it took to help the US win against Canada, against anybody. And while I may not have that many specific memories of myself playing against Canada, I feel like I have to bring up the infamous rain game from last year. The US women's national team was playing against Canada in the Gold Cup, and it was absolutely dumping down rain at Snapdragon Stadium. The field was a mess. The ball was like barely able to move across the surface. And it was such like a bizarre and borderline dangerous, but overall extremely memorable moment in the overall lore of this US women's national team versus Canada matchup. And at the time, I'm like a brand new member of the media. I had just recently retired. I started this podcast. I'm covering the game. And this was like a lot for a young, new reporter to have to cover. You can imagine that I did not really know how to handle this moment.
And apparently, I've never been on live television before.
So, in lieu of me having a lot of specific favorite memories of playing against Canada, I'm happy to provide one from TWG friend Megan Klingenberg. Here is her answer to her favorite memory from beating Canada.
The look on Christine Sinclair's face when we win. Quote me.
What a great question from Becky. What a great answer from Kling. And thanks again for listening, Becky. Thanks for calling in, and I will see you soon to record Good Vibes. This rivalry is coming to a head tonight. Legends will be watching, world-class coaches will be facing off, and a new generation of talent will be carrying forward the legacy that is USA versus Canada. I truly cannot wait to see what happens. And don't forget, I'll be reacting to the game live right at the final whistle with Canadian goalkeeping legend Steph LeBay. Make sure you join us on TWG's YouTube channel with your comments and questions and the chance to be one of our very special guests yourself. That's it for this mini episode of Sammy Banana Phone. Thanks to all of our callers and another huge thanks to our friends at Allstate. Banana out.